It doesn't matter.
But we were having some technical issues. So, wanted to introduce David here. And David works at Devereux.
Devereux, Advanced Behavioral Health.
Yeah, and your position there?
So I'm a counselor. I'm a licensed professional counselor in Texas, and at Devereux, I'm the director of business development.
Cool. Actually, I was going to take the time and not start off the conversation with what he did, but start off the conversation with, there's a jillion people in America today that, will come down with breast cancer, and they'll make a post on Facebook. When they make that post on Facebook, they will get a lot of, hey, we're praying for you, and, we are here for you, and what can we do for you to help support you? It's a little bit different story with mental health, isn't it? I mean, first of all, you're not going to post on Facebook, hey, I'm having severe mental health problems,
Sure.
or I have a son that's whatever. So
Right.
it's a completely different
It
level
is.
of community support.
It is. It's very different. There's still a massive stigma around mental health issues and around psychiatric illness and all kinds of beliefs about to what degree a person is responsible for their own circumstances, to what degree they can manage their behaviors without assistance, and beliefs that are often very unfair to people who are diagnosed with mental illness. So it stays in the shadows. It really does.
Yeah. How did you get into it?
So that's a good question. So my
You weren't
journey.
we don't talk about what questions we're going to ask.
No, we're freestyling here.
Yeah.
No, so my journey into a mental health career actually started when I was very, very young. I grew up in South Houston, just across the street from a girl. She was a couple of years younger than I was, and she was part of the little group that we all ran with. And she's on the autism spectrum. Of course, I didn't understand that as a child, but what I did get, I didn't have the words to articulate it, but I knew that she was developing differently, and that as the rest of us, as our interests evolved and we started kind of gravitating toward other things, she was developmentally in a different place. So from early on, I was kind of thinking about this issue of differences in development, and it just kind of planted a seed that grew into a mental health career, grew into getting an undergraduate in psychology, and then
Wow.
my master's in clinical psychology, and ultimately becoming a counselor. And so now I work with a similar population full time.
Okay, so tell us a little bit, for those that don't know, tell us a little bit about Devereux.
Sure.
And the clients that you treat there, and what your mission is.
Mm-hmm, sure. So Devereux is we're a historic institution. We were actually founded in 1912 out on the East Coast in Pennsylvania by a public school teacher named Helena Devereux.
Wow.
And so Mrs. Devereux, it was at the time a novel idea. It was kind of an early seed of special education.
1912?
Yeah, had this idea that all children could learn, some just learn differently. So she took a small group of students from her class, took them to her house, and began educating them around a kitchen table. She'd probably be prosecuted if she did that now, but at the time, I guess you could do that.
Yeah.
So that was we think of that as our first Devereux Center, that first handful of students that Mrs. Devereux worked with. So we have our seeds and our roots in special education. From there, we branched out. From that first center in Pennsylvania, we had a second center in Santa Barbara, California, and then our third program was in Texas, actually in Victoria. So we've been in the state of Texas since 1959. And now we're nationwide, but our center here in League City works with students ages 11 through 22 with severe mental illness, with learning disabilities, intellectual and developmental disabilities. Still very much a school-based program. We have an on-campus school where our students attend. So there's a round-the-clock program that our students participate in all day. They're supervised all day. They have therapists and psychiatrists and special ed teachers and lots of support there every day. So very much a place where students can get the treatment that they need, while also in many cases healing from trauma, which is another big part of our population.
So for the most part, how do your people end up coming into your facility?
Well, there are a lot of answers to that question. So we actually have students who come to us from all over the country. We're right here in the community, but because what we do is pretty specialized and pretty intensive. Of course, residential treatment, it's not your first stop. Typically, individuals who come to us have been through outpatient therapy, and they've tried medications, and they've tried different interventions to get to the point that they're looking at a long-term residential treatment program. So our students come to us from all over the country. Some of them are sent to us by families, some of them by mental health agencies, some of them by school districts. Of course, we work with up to age 22, so some refer themselves, identify the need for treatment, and then set it up themselves.
So just curious, as you're talking about, you know, where you originated from, and then being in California, and then coming to Texas.
Right.
So what I know about Texas, and you come and of course you validate that.
Mm-hmm.
What I know about Texas is in the country they're like number, was it 48, 49?
Yeah, at 48, 49, close to last place.
Just 1 second. We have a dog that is really misbehaving here and getting into the cookies. You know?
Oh, I hope the camera's catching that in the background.
Yeah, I think the camera's a little bit too low to catch it, but anyway.
Oh, Riley's eating cookies.
There we go. I know, right. So, but no, as we were saying, and then you validated that. But I mean, so we've had some mental health challenges in our family as well, and I'm just, you know, we can get into that.
Sure.
But I have a son that, you know, he's been diagnosed bipolar. And certainly as a young kid, I think it would have been easier now, but especially back then, there wasn't really. I mean, we would take him places, we'd have him tested, we'd say, no, he just needs discipline,
Sure.
you know, that kind of stuff. So I've had certainly an interest, as, you know, it didn't get easier when he grew up. It got harder, and I'm sure you're aware of that.
Right.
Phone's ringing. So that was a decline on the phone call. But, you know, so as he grew up, things didn't become easier. They just became harder and more challenging. So there's some, not that I know near what you know, but probably more than, or at least more aware than some as to how difficult it is. And then when you actually research it, Texas is like number 48
Number
or
like
49.
Yeah.
As far as government support.
Sure.
And spend to support the mental illness that we have here in Texas.
Right.
So you mentioned, you know, you guys were initially on the East Coast and then went from California. I'm just curious, coming to Texas, where you have such poor support.
Why did we do that?
Yeah.
So first of all, when we first came to Texas, it was 1959, so times were a little bit different. But really, it grew out of need. So the story goes that Dr. Constant, who was the founder, co-founder with Mrs. Devereux of our Victoria Center, had a son who we think now probably was on the autism spectrum. That wasn't the verbiage that was used at the time, but that's what we think was going on. And he had the same experience. He realized that there was absolutely nothing in South Texas to serve his son, and so he had done some work with Mrs. Devereux on the California Center.
Wow.
And he had served as a consultant.
And what year was this?
This was 1959.
Wow.
Well, a couple of years before. 59 is when we actually opened.
So we think it's bad now. Like back then, it had to be like...
Probably non-existent. Yeah, probably non-existent. And Mrs. Devereux actually picked up on that. So when he approached her and said, "Hey, I want to build a Devereux Center in Texas," Mrs. Devereux was a smart lady financially, and she said, "Is this going to be viable? Is there demand? Are you going to be able to make this work?" And so Dr. Constant opened the first Devereux in Texas initially at what's now Foster Field in Victoria, and did a ton of fundraising and did some really, really creative things to make it possible to start serving children with disabilities. Made it work, and so we built the campus that's in Victoria now. Opened that up in the mid-70s. It is. It's still there. We're still operating that. It's at 120 David Wade Drive, out in the middle of the country, off of Highway 59. And candidly, funding was a challenge beginning in 1959, and it still is today. Access to services is a massive challenge for families, and it's a big challenge for us to run some very expensive programs in a state that, as you said, overall lags behind on mental health funding.
Yeah, so as a state that lags behind on mental health funding, how do you guys get funded for the most part?
Well, so there's a couple of answers to that. One is, as I said, we do work nationwide, which is somewhat helpful. We really wouldn't be able to make it work without doing that.
Wow.
But the other answer is that we're very dependent on our community to support us. So, of course, I have to give a plug if you.
No,
you,
yeah, it's a reality. And
it is absolutely. So we do have lots of fundraising events throughout the year. 3 big ones. We do the Y'all Catch the Spirit event. We have an annual gala that's coming up in a couple of months, and we do the Divots for Devereux golf tournament. And we, of course, we're always raising funds on our website. If you go to the webpage, there's a donate link right up on the top corner. So we are very dependent on our communities to support us and help us to close in that gap while we're working to hopefully change things for the future with the way mental health services are funded.
Okay. Do you see much hope coming up anytime in the near future of Texas changing its level of support?
I do, absolutely I do. I think, what we're seeing is changes in pockets, and that's really, really encouraging. So we're seeing some changes, particularly with the foster care population, children who are in CPS custody. That's been a big focus for Governor Abbott, actually, and his wife, Mrs. Abbott, Cecilia Abbott, was actually out to visit us just a couple of months ago at our League City campus.
Right.
So they've really taken an interest. Hank Whitman, who's the commissioner for the Department of Family Protective Services, has been influential in bringing about some changes. And what we've discovered is that not only is it better for children to get those high-end services that they need, but it's also less expensive in the long run, because what we're trying to do is break a cycle of bouncing from one placement to the next, and really get those intensive services that we need so they can go to a foster home or be adopted.
Yeah, so some of the numbers that you sent me, that I'll share, and shoot, you guys should like be clicking on the keyboard. See, they don't even pay attention to me. You guys should be clicking on the keyboard.
Yeah, I think they're watching something else. I don't think they're watching us. They're playing with the cat.
Yeah, mental illness doesn't discriminate. It affects people of every race. We certainly know that. Half of the cases of chronic mental illness start at age 14.
Yes.
I can tell you, like, from the time, and I'm just sharing again, and I had said that I would openly share, with the permission of my son, openly share a little bit about our journey. Like, I can tell you pretty young on, like from the time he started getting in kindergarten, he was that child that was a challenge.
Right.
And by the time he hit 3rd grade, was just, throughout time, was acting out in all different kind of ways.
Sure.
And by the time he hit 3rd grade was, certainly acting out. So
yeah,
he was certainly starting at 14.
And that's very common for families of children with mental illness, because it's not quite accurate, I guess I should say, that it starts at 14, but when children reach a developmental stage where you start really seeing it, it starts shaping up and becoming more identifiable. But you hear that very often from parents of children who are struggling with mental illness, that I always knew. There were always those challenges, though we didn't necessarily recognize them for what they were till later.
Yeah.
Very common.
And I don't say, and I want to be real clear, I don't say any of this to, I want to make it really clear, I don't say any of this to say, for us as parents, I don't say this I say this for getting the word out there.
Right.
And
right.
like the being firsthand, and then of course you talk to other people, and you have, like you said,
Sure.
very similar experiences.
Right.
And I know at that point in time in our lives, it was not really knowing what we were dealing with.
Sure.
We were getting teachers saying, "Gosh, you should just put them on Ritalin." Well, that wasn't the answer.
Right.
Or you deal with friends and stuff like our kids behave. Obviously you're not parenting very well because you can't get your kid to behave.
Right.
So it's a discipline issue, and then as a parent, we become.
So the parent's stigmatized as well.
Well,
family.
well, not only that, as a parent, you become very much disciplinarian.
Sure.
And bless his heart, he didn't really need a disciplinarian in his life.
Right.
But he got a disciplinarian because obviously it was a discipline issue.
Right.
When
right.
it never was.
Right. But that's one of the stops on the journey, inevitably, for parents.
Yeah. So I'm just kind of sharing a little bit that journey because I I know there's other parents out there that kind
Yes.
of go through that same thing.
Right. And what you're doing is helping to break down the stigma. You know, like we're talking about earlier, we keep this in the shadows. People don't feel comfortable coming forward because of all of that, because there is so much judgment around it, and even still a lack of awareness, and so it's not openly talked about, which is sad, because the reality is that there is help out there. Not easy to access always because of some of the challenges we've been talking about, but there is help.
And not even, I would say, at that point in time that that I was worrying about stigma, because I just tend to be, what it is what it is.
Right.
So there was never that. It was just, we were hitting brick walls as far as trying to figure out what the problem was. We actually brought him several places, but you know what a broken leg looks like. You don't always know what a broken head looks like.
Right, you're right. Well, there's no, the thing is, we've made incredible strides on understanding mental illness, but in the grand scheme of things, we're in our knowledge of the brain is in its infancy. I mean, it's a pretty magnificent organ, but when you think about where we are in relation to, say, hearts, you can literally transplant a heart and reanimate it and bring some, and we're just nowhere near that level with the brain. There is no blood test to say, well, this is depression, or this is bipolar, and this is exactly the medication that'll work. So it does wind up being a journey, much more so than, like you say, a broken leg that's pretty obvious and you treat it very, very easily. But again, the reality is that the more open we are to talking about it, the more likely people are to get help, because it's complicated, but there is help out there. There are psychiatrists and counselors and support groups and people who can help.
So I think and maybe it's a little different now than it was back then, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's also important to be able to share with somebody a direction that they could go. I would tell you, we went in direction, we probably didn't go in the right directions.
Okay.
So I think as people are out there right now, what direction do you suggest they go to?
Yeah, so there are several different answers for that, but I'd say, one is if you, one is just kind of educating yourself. You feel it in your gut when you or somebody you love is struggling with mental illness, and if you feel that, don't ignore it. Insist on getting help, though, like we've talked about, you'll hit some roadblocks along the way, but be persistent. Turning to outpatient counselors is a really great place to go. If you have insurance available, then you can contact your insurance company and they can help get you plugged in with services. That's a really, really great place to start. And then you may be directed from there to see a psychiatrist. You should ask about support groups in the community, both for the individual with mental illness and for the family as well. Families need that support too. So definitely those are all good directions to turn.
I have to say too, dealing with the son of a son, a grandson, the school system is completely different in the level of support they provide.
Absolutely.
As opposed to where we were, say 30 years ago.
Absolutely.
I mean, entirely night and day difference. So
I would agree with that. I'll share that right here in our community, Clear Creek ISD, right after the Santa Fe shooting, which of course just shocked us all. They reached out to us and they put together a panel to take a look at the way they're handling many things at schools, security, identifying students who need extra support, looking at their policies and procedures, and they reached out to us, and our executive director at Devereux sat on a panel with Clear Creek's superintendent, and we talked very openly about mental health issues in the schools and how to support those students, which is a massive change from where the school system was many years ago. And I think that's become more the norm, that schools see themselves, given the access they have to students, they see themselves as having the opportunity to intervene when other systems aren't set up to, because they just don't have that level of access. I think that's wonderful.
And I have to say too, I think a teacher in some ways is probably even more aware than a parent is. A parent has the experience of 1, 2, or 3 children.
Right.
A teacher sees in schools and works with tens of hundreds of children throughout their career.
They have that perspective for sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, teachers, and that teachers are also being trained these days. More and more teachers are getting training like mental health first aid. They're learning how to spot students who may be suicidal, who need that extra support and get them the referrals that they need, which is remarkable because they do have that access and that perspective. They see so many students, and so they know as well when something's wrong. So I think that's wonderful, desperately needed.
Super awesome.
Yeah.
I'm just going to share some other of these numbers, right? So 70% of the youth in the juvenile justice systems suffer from mental illness. 37% of all students aged 14 or older who have a mental health condition will drop out of school.
Yes.
So that certainly doesn't help them on their path.
It
One
does
in
not.
5 children. So that's a big number. 1 in 5 children, 13 to 18 years old, have a serious mental illness, or will have at some point
Isn't
in
that
time.
remarkable?
I mean, gosh, if you said 1 in 5 people were going to develop,
Right.
whatever today,
Right.
that would be a serious crisis.
Sure,
Right.
absolutely. And the thing is, it speaks to how little we talk about this openly, because 1 in 5, that's a huge number, and we're not talking
That
about
is
that
a
much.
huge number.
Right. It also points out the fact that for many mental illness is episodic. It's not something that you'll necessarily struggle with forever. You may have a depressive episode, and it comes and goes if you get the right treatment. So there's that reality as well. But these are intense numbers, because we're talking about that 1 in 5. We're talking about serious mental illness, really truly debilitating serious mental illness that, at least for a time, requires some pretty intensive intervention.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go back to my son. We're going to pop in and out there because
Okay.
it's like a real life story. And
Yeah,
like I said, I've
absolutely.
gotten his permission. So I'm going to kind of finish out his journey a little bit. So definitely as a child, as parents, we just, we felt like we were trying a lot of different things. And
Right.
the last time we had him to a psychiatrist, he said, he needs to just, I don't remember the exact words, but it's like, he's got an anger issue, and I don't have time. It's him, which is.
Sure.
But he was at 17. It's like he was the kid that was, I'm going to hit the road. I'm going to join the military.
Right.
And we almost looked at each other like, wow, maybe that will get everything fixed up.
Uh-huh.
And it didn't. I mean, he still had his challenges, and as he's grown into adulthood, him and our daughter-in-law and the kids that live with us,
Right.
and we've certainly been that village.
Mhm.
He's gone through very bad alcoholism issues. He has like one of the worst times, I'll tell you, and it was, that's the thing, he doesn't get support either, so he's feeling his pain. He's masking it with alcohol.
Right.
I'm not teaching you anything here.
Sure.
He's masking it with alcohol, and like I can, like one of the, blow-ups episodes in our house was, okay, he'd been drinking, so everybody's kind of on pins and needles because he wasn't a happy drunk guy.
Right.
He was always got angry, so everybody's kind of on pins and needles, so we're just kind of ignoring him. Well, he's not, he's also hurting inside,
Yes,
right? He's
right,
not getting
right.
that support. He's recognizing that he's alienating himself, but doesn't know how to handle it.
Right.
Walks out the back door, wants the keys to a car, and of course he's not getting it. And I'm, as things progress, you learn to strategically park your car in places where they can't get out
Right,
and things
right,
like that, right? So he goes to get in his car, found his keys, and of course I'm parked in the way you can't get out.
Right.
Picks up my Remax sign from the side of the house, walks over to my car, and starts smashing in all the windows of the car.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so I mean,
Oh boy.
episodes throughout
Right.
our time, and then on the other side would be just a guy desperately crying for help.
Sure.
We, one of the things we ended up doing in our situation, not knowing where to go, there was somebody that had turned me onto a book, and you probably know all this stuff. It's called Change Your Brain, Change Your Life.
I've heard of it. Yeah.
Well, I started listening to it, and I started thinking, because they had, and this was a friend of mine in California, and I started listening to it, and it's like, wow, I'm recognizing so many different things, right?
Right.
Well, it was written by a guy, Dr. Amen,
Okay.
in
Yeah.
California,
Uh-huh.
and he ran an Amen clinic, and he talked about him going there, and a couple of his friends that had gone over there, and had really, gotten. So they do like the PET scan of the brain and all that kind of
Right.
stuff, and read it.
Right.
So we had saved up. It wasn't a cheap deal.
Right.
But we had saved up and we had sent him and my daughter-in-law over there, and they do like a week-long evaluation. They do the PET scan of the brain and all that
Right.
kind of stuff. And the Thursday night before they've come back after they've done the week of evaluation,
Right.
you know, they're sitting at a restaurant and they FaceTime me live.
Yeah.
And they have the pictures of his brain. It's like, so, hey, Mom, where are you? You know, it's like, hey, I'm here. Tell me what's going on. It's like, well, you know, we have, you know, some pictures. And they show me the pictures, and it's like, you know, I didn't have to see a picture of what normal looked like
Right.
to know that that wasn't normal.
That wasn't it. Yeah.
So it was really an eye-opener for me. Was really an eye-opener for him. He's in his 30s, and you can share the statistics on that.
Sure.
Getting on medication when you're 30s doesn't statistically happen very frequently. So
Right.
he's still fighting the medicine thing of it, but hasn't had a drink since he came back, and this is, she's talking. This has been like a year and a half, 2 years ago.
Oh, that's amazing.
So just
That's
having
incredible.
that awareness
That's incredible.
that it's something besides I'm just broken or I'm
Right,
just
right.
angry
Right.
was,
And you know,
trust me, he's still bipolar.
right. Right.
But the difference is he's aware. So
Right.
he still has his great moments, he still has his not so great moments. He still should get on medication.
Right. Right.
But that doesn't feel normal to him either.
Right.
Because by
Right.
then your normal isn't.
Right.
Your
The
normal is
gets kinda skewed,
your
yeah.
normal is fixed and abnormal. Abnormal is normal, right?
Right, right, absolutely. And you bring up a really good point, which is the need for persistence for families who have loved ones who have mental illness, because you know, families will share similar experiences. We went and we saw the psychiatrist, family doctor, counselor, whoever, and just didn't really get what we needed. And you know, I always tell people that there has to be a fit there, and not everybody is a fit for every counselor. The mental health field is there's a lot of
They're
art.
just people too.
They're just people, and
It is art.
there's a lot of art involved, and so it just might not be a fit. So if you go and you don't get the help that you need, don't be afraid to keep looking. Now, having said that, therapy is hard. So you know, that doesn't mean, you know, leave your therapist because you're not liking the treatment. But if you leave and you know, I just didn't get what I needed there, then don't be afraid to shop around. A lot of counselors, most counselors, will do a preliminary consultation with you at no charge, either by phone or in person, for exactly that reason, to see if this is going to be a fit. Because they all have their different areas of expertise, their different personalities, and it really needs to click. So kudos to you for not stopping it at that point. And that may have been just a wonderful psychiatrist.
We stopped at many points, trust me.
Sure, sure.
But I mean, also back to how we kind of started things off.
Mhm.
If you tell me you have, you know, bone cancer, I'm like, man, what can I do? And I have to say, I'm proud of my son on a lot of levels, because he really has lived a life of alienation to a large degree because of the acting out. You know, you're not your mother's favorite firstborn son after you do something like that, right?
Right.
And then you also bear that that self-pain. Nobody wants to be that person, right?
Right.
So you bear the embarrassment, you bear, you know,
Right.
not knowing how to control yourself.
Right.
So I have to give him kudos. He's not been, you know, his life with mental illness, which is a disease and a sickness,
Right.
has not been the, you know, how can I help you, and we're here for you cheering. No, and it's you alienate yourself from
Sure.
people.
Sure.
So in addition to having mental illness, you don't have support.
Right.
Or
right.
you can have some support sometimes, but it's kind of a bittersweet support sometimes. It's like something's wrong, or is something wrong?
Right.
But
Right.
there is this, I don't want to say lack of love. Obviously there's love.
But it can sure feel that way.
But yeah, it's very guarded. It's, you know, because the hurt goes both way, and it's
Right.
hard to, you know, love when, you know, people, and of course you're reaching out,
Right. Right.
you know, with not great behaviors which cause pain because of their situation. So
Right.
I have to say, you know, you look at him now, and he's very aware and very, I'm very proud of him that he doesn't mind me sharing the story, because
Amazing.
they're not great stories, and we spoke about it, and
Sure.
he, you know, we spoke about him coming on here at some point in time and sharing that for
That'd be
that
powerful.
awareness. It'd be powerful. It would depend on what day of the week it was. But I would plan this and it'd be like, this is gonna be a bashing time, or, you know,
Sure,
but
sure.
that's part of family engagement anyway.
Right, that's part of the family
And then
dynamic, sure.
and then you throw mental illness in here.
Right, right. So
and,
can I?
But anyway, ask whatever questions.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm curious because I think for a lot of families, this is a really important piece as well.
Well, and that's why we're
If-
sharing, because
Yeah, are you comfortable talking about what you've done to keep yourself healthy while dealing with that?
I'm comfortable talking about anything. I mean,
I get that impression. That's why I
no,
asked.
and I haven't been the greatest mother in that. I mean, I feel like, okay, I could have not given up. And it's not that I gave up. I was also, you know, you have these mothers that say, Johnny does no bad.
Right.
I was never
right.
that mother. I was a mother that, yeah, I'm going to support my kids, and I'm going to, you know, I want the best for them and all that kind of stuff. But I was never the parent that wanted to be, oh no, my little Johnny would never do something like that. You know, so
right.
you know, you also have the, okay, so I just have to discipline more or whatever. So I've been that parent.
Right.
And
Well, you probably got that feedback.
well, and
from
I'm
others.
gonna tell you too that the me that I am today is certainly not the me that I was parenting my kids. I know where my son got his bipolarness from, and it was from his father, from his grandfather, my father.
Okay.
I don't think I'm bipolar. If I am, I've sure missed it. But no, I mean, I just haven't gone through, you know, a lot of those things.
Right,
but
right.
certainly, my father had some issues, and so, you know, you look back now, you can connect those dots, right?
Right.
So, I would say as a child growing up, I didn't come from a parental, wholesome family, and certainly could have done things differently in my parenting. And then you throw in a child that's that needs help in special ways, but you don't recognize it.
Sure.
You think you're doing the right things.
Right.
Yeah, in hindsight, I would have said, "Oh no, we're not giving up. You know, we still.
Right.
You don't have it right."
Right. Parenting, I think, well, any parent will tell you that parenting is a journey. It's not linear. So,
No.
but I mean, I think it speaks volumes that, you know, you still have a relationship and you're still fighting for your son and talking about this.
He is a difficult fella, but he's an amazing fella.
Sure.
I mean, he really is.
Yeah.
You look at, I mean, right now he's just finished up doing his massage, getting his stuff for doing massages.
Oh, that's great.
He's going back to school and interested in getting into kinesiology.
Wow.
He will still go to the AA clinic, and I don't think he goes there so much for him. I mean, he's really good now. He goes there because I think he wants to do what he can to help others.
Right.
He is in a position, you know, where he's led a lifetime of hurt, so can also be hurtful.
Sure.
I mean, he is where he is, but he also recognizes a lot of where he's at, and you know, I tell you, having the physical image of your brain and being able to say, you know, that was definitely an eye opener for
That's
him.
not
I mean,
typical.
yeah,
No.
that was definitely a defining, changing moment.
Right.
It's funny, we're driving in the car, I think it's about a month ago now, and we're, you know, just jabbering, genie in the bottle, what would you want? If you had the genie in the bottle, what would your first wish be? Your mine would be to eat anything that I wanted to eat without having to worry about
Wouldn't that
whether it
be
was
nice? Yeah.
I mean, that would be a great genie wish. His was, I'd like to be able to just read and process things like I think normal people process. And I thought, wow. Didn't even recognize or realize,
Right.
you know, as he's going to school now and struggling, and that's a big frustration for him.
Sure.
Because, I mean, somebody else might go to school and, you know, for them it's a normal lesson plan. He struggles
Right. Right.
because he doesn't process the information the same way you or I would.
Right. Right.
So,
Yeah, and developing that understanding is great. It's a big part of why you don't always get the sympathy or not the sympathy, but the understanding and the support that you need,
yeah.
because it's not understood commonly that people with mental illness, they do struggle with things that are that may be easy for others. So you have that pull yourself up by the bootstraps mentality that just doesn't work when you're really truly dealing with a neurological difference. that's impacting someone. But you know, something you said that I think is pretty fantastic is that you said going to AA, right, to Alcoholics Anonymous, partly for himself, but partly to give back to others.
I'll tell you, that's huge for him right now.
And
I mean, that's been.
That's massive. That's a big part, I'll tell you, of what we do at Devereux. Our students are receiving a lot of services, of course, counseling and support and psychiatric services, and very, very intensive, but we are very careful to make sure that we get them out volunteering and giving back, and that's critical because none of us want to feel like we're just a sponge for others' support, but that we're giving something back. That in and of itself is healing. So that's really wonderful that he's doing that.
I think especially if you live in Texas.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean,
that's
seriously,
true.
because Texas it is just that more so environment than I think other
It
places
is. We like to
would
work
come.
hard and be productive, and yeah.
we Texans. I mean, we like to give back.
We like to give back.
Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. So that's wonderful. I'm glad to hear that. That's great.
So anyway, and I appreciate your views on it too. And like I said, you guys hearing it. I hope when you're hearing it, I don't know where I'd tell you to go. You'd go talk to David here.
Sure.
And I think that is still the message to get out there is where do people go.
Yeah, and I think it's obviously I should always say if there's a true psychiatric emergency, meaning that you're with you or somebody you're with is potentially a danger to themselves or somebody else, they're threatening suicide, potentially going to harm somebody else. Call 911, go to the nearest hospital emergency room, get that really quick emergency support. But very often when people are looking for support, it's not that. It's the more chronic, day to day, I know I need help. No, it's not bubbling over that way now, but I know I need help. And so for those, again, find a counselor, talk to your family doctor, or seek the support of a psychiatrist. And get help there. Those are all good places to start.
And for a lot of people with insurance and what it is now, that's I mean, face it, that's also an issue.
Right, absolutely, it is.
I think honestly, our school systems
Agreed.
are a fantastic place. Your school counselors and stuff, especially in those early years, are a fantastic place to go to.
Yeah,
right
school
now.
counselors are a great
so
place
than,
to start.
More so than they were before.
Right.
By large.
Yeah, I'm glad you bring that up. That is a great resource. If you're talking about a school-age child, go to the school counselor for sure. That's a wonderful place
because
to start.
Because they have a lot more
help
training in that than
they do. They have training and they have the ability to refer you to people who can give the more specialized support that you may need. Every situation's a little different, so there's no one-size-fits-all approach. But definitely for that school-age child, the school counselor is a great place to start. Support groups as well. Alcoholics Anonymous is great. Al-Anon for families of people struggling with substance abuse. Churches are a great place to look for those. Lots of those support groups happen in churches. There's several great websites. Google Alcoholics Anonymous meetings, and you'll have resources pop up and tell you where those are. So those are all great places to look. And yeah, you can call me at Devereux and ask for me by name, and I'd be happy to help you get where you need to go. Use that as a resource as well.
Okay, and I was just going to finish up on some of these statistics, just to get them out there. On average, it takes 8 to 10 years. It takes 8 to 10 years following the onset of mental health symptoms for a person to receive intervention.
Yes.
I think so it's not easy.
Most people struggle for a very long time before getting help.
It's not taking the blue pill.
Right, it's not. Yeah.
Suicide is the 10th leading cause of death in the United States, and the 3rd leading cause of death for those ages 10 to 24. I don't even look at a 10-year-old and think suicide.
Yeah, it's very, very real. It's and I will say, since we're on that subject, that one of the most critical things that all of us can do, not just the mental health providers, is to watch out for that. Watch for the signs of suicide, and they're pretty straightforward. People will verbalize very often that they're thinking about suicide. They may say that directly, or it may come in a more cryptic form. Things like, maybe everybody would be better off if I wasn't here. Things like that. don't ignore those comments. People sometimes think that they may plant an idea or say it wrong. Really, the only wrong way to say it is, or to ask the question, is to not ask it at all. So don't be afraid to ask, and ask very directly. Are you thinking about taking your own life? Are you considering suicide? Just ask the question. You know, with suicide, sometimes you'll hear people say things. I don't know if you've ever heard this. People will say, doesn't really matter if you intervene or not. If somebody's planning on killing themselves, they're going to do it. It's just not true.
I don't
If
believe
you've heard,
that, yeah.
I don't either, and the
I
research
think
doesn't
you're
back
just,
it up.
Yeah, I think you're just hurting.
Right, right.
And nobody wants to hurt.
Our research tells us that people who have attempted suicide once are almost no more likely to attempt suicide again than someone who has never attempted suicide. Meaning that for most people it's a one-time episode. The average length of a suicidal episode is about 6 hours. So it's this window where somebody can be there to support and get a person the help they need. You've probably saved a life for good. So absolutely, if you get that feeling that maybe somebody's thinking about suicide, please ask the question. And if the answer is yes, I am thinking about suicide, then help that person get the help they need. That may look like calling 911, going to a hospital emergency room, but get them plugged in. And again, don't be afraid that asking the question is going to plant an idea. It just doesn't work that way. So don't be afraid to ask.
Very cool. Texas, and we spoke about this, but I'm going to put it out there again. Texas ranks 49th per capita for funding of mental health services. That's a number I really hope that we can improve.
Absolutely.
As the largest mental health provider in Harris County is
the Harris
jail.
County Jail. Yes.
Yeah. And early intervention, I think I completely hear you. I think that is key. You know, again, speaking about my son Thor, he would, he's not interested in going on medication. If he was going on medication, he wouldn't feel like him. So who you are as a kid is who you feel like, and then
Sure.
who you are used to feeling like.
Right.
That's you know, we all want to feel like ourselves, even if ourselves is broken.
Right, right. Yeah, and thankfully there's new advances in medication therapies all the time, because you hear that very commonly with psychiatric medications, that people don't feel like themselves, or there's side effects that are very real. So hopefully he'll be open to trying some different things.
We still have conversations?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure. I do want to say, if for anybody who's wanting to get involved, we do have volunteer opportunities at Devereux. If you don't mind me plugging that.
I would love you to plug in anyway. So first of all, I would say, share this.
Yes.
1 in 5. So you have a friend who's not telling you about it. 1 in 5 have somebody going through this, or 1 in 5 people are going through some kind of mental health issue.
Right.
So for a friend, share this, because they may be going through this and not feeling like they're in a position where they can share it, or not being aware of, you know, what to do or what they could or should be doing.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
for sure, share the video, and then
things you can do to help: share the video. Find an organization that does this kind of work. If you're in the League City community, Devereux's right there at 518 and I-45. We have volunteers. You asked earlier about how we stay operational, and volunteer support from the community.
So volunteer support from the community, is that strictly on funding, or is it also?
No. So one of the ways certainly community members can help is by helping with funding, with donations. But we have people who come in and help us with tutoring our students.
Awesome.
We have a group who maintains our library. We have people who throw birthday parties for our children. For those who want to get involved but aren't looking for something as hands-on, we also need volunteers for our events, for our gala, our Y'all Catch the Spirit, our Divots for Devereux event. So lots of opportunities to volunteer. The contact for that is Joni Robertson. She's our Director of Development. Or you could contact me, or just call our front desk and tell them you want to help out, and we would love to have you.
Okay, that sounds great. I don't think the word gets out there as much as it should, so we'll have to get Joni to working harder. But I appreciate you so much coming and sharing this today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
I hope this gets shared. I know TJ is going to get it shared on I-45 now, but I appreciate you coming over. And if you guys have any questions, I'll be glad to I'll find a direction to steer you in.
Thanks for having me.
No, appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.